The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing our savior, overcoming hurdles, achieving dreams. Together we can succeed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to season 17 of The Paula Show. We're grateful that you have been watching our program all these years, since 2013, and now it's 2022. You have been watching via CTV Channel 2 on Tuesday nights at 9 and Sundays at 1 in the afternoon. Our program times continue the same for season 17. Tonight, we're speaking about autism. And I've invited the mother of 2 boys who are autistic. She's passionate about ensuring that individuals with autism and persons with disability are understood. She advocates for these individuals, so much so that a law was just recently changed in England because of the efforts of Caroline Hopton and her 2 friends. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a 2-part program, and we're delighted to present part 1 to you tonight. So thank you for staying with us on The Paula Show, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Autistic and learning disabled persons face many inequalities throughout their lives. Many miss out on valuable education. Few are able to access training or employment once they leave school. Healthcare needs can go unnoticed or be neglected. Social isolation is commonplace. Lack of supported community living solutions leads to institutionalization. At Blue Dragonfly, we are committed to building a fully sustainable, supportive community, ensuring integration into the wider community. We are committed to providing experts to train staff in schools, supporting families to understand their loved one's condition and assisting them to succeed, providing person-centered vocational training and employment opportunities through our diverse social enterprise initiatives, ensuring access to appropriate health care, implementing programs designed around social interaction and community leisure activities, building safe and dignified living spaces within our supported community. Our unique and innovative approach to learning and living will provide lifelong opportunities to differently abled Antiguans and Barbudans, enabling them to lead safe, happy, and fulfilled lives just like anyone else. Embracing difference, creating change.
Thank you for staying with us on The Paula Show. Tonight, my guest is Caroline Hopton. And as I mentioned before, we'll be speaking all night about autism. And later, we'll tell you about the Blue Dragonfly Foundation.
Indeed.
And the Barbuda Ocean Club partnership. You have lots going on, Caroline.
It has been a really busy time.
Yes.
We launched the foundation a month ago, and it's just been all systems go. I've been blown away by the support we've had, the interest we've had, all the people who've called me. I've had calls from parents, from professionals. It's been amazing, and I'm just so excited.
And we are delighted to have you on the Paula Show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to know more about Caroline. You're a London girl.
I am. London, mate.
Father was an ENT, mother a nurse.
Yes, I was born in London, and my father was an ENT surgeon, and he's now retired. He's 92 now. He's of an age, and he met my mother, who was a nurse at the time. And we lived in London, and my father moved around quite a lot. He was a very successful surgeon, and he got posted in all sorts of wonderful places. And we moved to Queens in New York,
Yes, I'm a New York girl.
Yes.
Yes. Well, not Queens, the Bronx. BX.
Right, right. Ooh, well. So we lived in Queens as children for a short while, went to school there. It was just a completely different kind of experience, you know, when
Culture
we were
shock to the UK.
Oh, I loved it.
You loved New York?
My brother and I loved it.
What was so special about New York when compared to London?
The barbers, the lollipop we used to get at the barbers, the 7-Up machine on the corner,
That's
walking
true,
to
that's
school.
true.
I mean, we didn't have such things. It was just bliss.
Yes.
But it was very different when we got to school because
What happened?
we used to be escorted even to the bathroom with by policemen and
Why was
Alsatians, and it was security even back then. I mean, we're talking the early 60s, and it was a very different experience to what we're used to. And my brother and I used to get up and watch the Flintstones at 5 a.m. much to our parents' disdain.
The Flintstones are still on. Can you
Yes,
imagine since the 60s?
Exactly.
Did you travel around a lot in the US or you were primarily based in New York?
We were based in New York, but my parents bought this yellow VW Beetle.
Yellow.
Yellow. It's bright yellow. It's wonderful.
Your family's flamboyant.
My mother was very flamboyant,
Oh,
very,
okay.
very vivacious,
Yes.
lovely, fantastic person, full of
Yes.
personality. And we travelled around the States in this VW. My brother and I used to take it in turns to lie on the back shelf and wave at people behind the window. Now, you could do that in those days. Now,
Not
it's
anymore.
all about seatbelts, safety.
Yes.
But back then, it was so different.
Yes.
So we
It
did
was
travel.
Just us being children, being free.
Exactly.
But now
No,
there's
it's
so many restrictions.
rules and regulations.
After that stint in the US, did you travel to another country or you returned
went-
to the UK?
We went back to the UK. My mother wasn't getting on too well in New York, and so we went back to the UK, and I think she missed her friends and her life, you know. So we went back to the UK, and then we lived in Bristol, which is in the West Country, for quite a few years. And when I was 17, I left home, went back to London, and I went to Secretarial College, where I did a diploma in business and secretarial studies, you know, learning on one of those old typewriters that used to make your fingers sore, and learning shorthand. I mean,
I
all of
loved
these things.
shorthand.
Well, it's an amazing
Yes,
skill. Not that
yes.
I've kept it, because I haven't,
Well, I haven't
unfortunately.
kept mine either, but I loved it.
When I left the college, there was the BBC had come to the college, BBC Television, come to the college and said, we've got a job, one job in our television training department. So, you know, your students can apply for this job.
BBC.
And I was like, I want that
Big,
job.
big,
I want
big,
that
big.
job.
I see the flamboyance of your mother coming out in you just now. I want that job, I want that job. Did you get it?
I did, and I'm sure it's only because I put I like broadcasting on the application form. I'm sure of it. I'm sure that's
Did you
what
like broadcasting?
clinched it.
Did you like broadcasting?
Well, who doesn't like TV?
Okay. Just checking, just checking, just checking. So you got the job and you were doing TV.
I did. So I went to work in the television training department for two wonderful producers, and we used to make sort of spoof movies and little dramas to teach would-be producers within the BBC how to film, how to put together scripts, how to produce, basically. And so I used to take part in those as well. I used to get pulled into them. It was such fun. We had a great time. It was
I
hard
love
work.
TV. I could be on TV all day long.
yes.
No
I do
wonder you're
love
so
TV.
at home here. You know, looking all erect and, you know,
I'm quite
the
relaxed.
posture and everything, because you've done TV before.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
and that was during the time of our girl, Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher.
Yes, I
About-
think it was.
yes.
Well, this was this, gosh, it's hard to remember, isn't it?
She
The
was
late-
1979 to 1980.
Yes, it could have
so
been just before.
just before her.
And then, yes, I mean, she did come in during that
Yes,
time. It was a
yes.
very flamboyant time
Yes.
in the world, wasn't
Won
it?
3 consecutive terms.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
And, you know, the economy was flourishing.
Yes.
And it was the real sort of champagne lifestyle at that time.
Champagne
It was
and
so
limousines.
different. Yes.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
How were you on TV? Because you're rather poised now, but you were younger then.
Yes.
Did you have that type of liberal personality?
I did, yes. I was quite, I wasn't a rebel, but I was quite sort of expressive and quite a spirit, and I used to like going out. I used to like experiencing new experiences, and I moved over to current affairs actually in the BBC, so I got promoted into current affairs, and I found that all a bit stilted, you know, news stories and very serious things. At that time, I was well into sort of my fashion, and I used to wear a lot of black clothes, and I had very strange hair. I mean, I look back now.
At the conservative BBC?
I did, and they used to think I was a bit of a novelty. So they put me on the music desk, where we used to book in a band once a week, a live band on the show. And in those days, a live band was really a live band. You know, sometimes we used to have whole orchestras coming in, you know, to play pop songs, and they were always pop artists, you know, people in the charts.
As opposed to just a DVD.
Oh yeah, yeah, and lip syncing. It was live. I mean, it was literally live.
Yes.
So I got involved with that, and I was dealing with all the record companies, all the major record companies like Warner Brothers. Then they were called WEA, Warner Electric Atlantic Records, and you know, Universal Music, all these sort of big record companies. And after, I think it was after about a couple of years, Warner Brothers called me and said, we'd like to offer you a job. So I ended up moving over to the music industry, and I had a fantastic job as the manager of television and promotions. So I used to travel all over with the artists, coordinating everything from the live performances to, well, really looking after them, which was hard work.
I know what that is. I worked at Cable and Wireless for a number of years, and the company sponsored West Indies cricket, and you had certain expectations of adults, but then you realize you have. But while all this was happening, you weren't even thinking of children. You weren't even thinking of Antigua and Barbuda. No. And here you are now. So we're going to take a break from this first segment. Sure. Now we've gotten to know a little bit more about you, Caroline Hopton. And when we return, we'll speak about your visit to Antigua and how this small island stole your heart.
Certainly did that.
Autistic and learning disabled persons face many inequalities throughout their lives. Many miss out on valuable education. Few are able to access training or employment once they leave school. Healthcare needs can go unnoticed or be neglected. Social isolation is commonplace. Lack of supported community living solutions leads to institutionalization. At Blue Dragonfly, we are committed to building a fully sustainable, supportive community, ensuring integration into the wider community. We are committed to providing experts to train staff in schools, supporting families to understand their loved one's condition and assisting them to succeed, providing person-centered vocational training and employment opportunities through our diverse social enterprise initiatives, ensuring access to appropriate health care, implementing programs designed around social interaction and community leisure activities, building safe and dignified living spaces within our supported community. Our unique and innovative approach to learning and living will provide lifelong opportunities to differently abled Antiguans and Barbudans, enabling them to lead safe, happy, and fulfilled lives just like anyone else. Embracing difference, creating change.
We left the UK and you're on a round-the-world trip.
Yeah, so I came out of the music industry, went into television training for a while, media training. So training corporate people how to behave in interviews and you know, be aware of their body language and what they say and the language that they use. So I was working with journalists and things, and it wasn't really the job for me. And I thought, you know what, I need a bit of a change. I needed to open up my life.
Yes.
So
You
I
need some
bought-
adventure.
Yes, yes, I needed adventure, and I've been going for
Yeah.
a while. You know how it is, and
Yes,
sometimes you
yeah,
just think,
yeah.
you know, I need to have a different perspective. And I think from an early childhood, I got the travel bug because we moved around a
Yes.
lot, and it got in my blood.
I actually love traveling.
Yes.
I'm glad it's in my blood.
Yes, it's the best education I think you can get.
When my children were younger, growing up, I would take them all over. I
Yes.
would just travel with them because I said, when you travel and you become accustomed to different cultures and to the nuances and the idiosyncrasies, you won't find it odd when people behave in a particular way.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be offensive either.
Absolutely.
Because difference doesn't mean bad.
That's right.
Yes.
And it just opens up your way of thinking.
Yes.
It gives you different perspectives.
More
I think.
appreciative.
Yeah, yeah. So I bought a round the world ticket. Well, it wasn't quite round the world, but it was coming to Antigua first for a rest because
Yes.
I had a little taste of the Caribbean and I'd done some of the other islands and I thought,
Okay.
I need to go to Antigua. So I bought a round the world ticket. Antigua was my rest stop.
Okay.
And I was going to go to South and Central America, and I still have that desire to get there.
Love
but-
it, love it. We'll go together.
Oh,
I
love
love
that
it.
idea.
I love it.
I think we'd have fun.
Yes, I'm sure.
So I came to Antigua and never left, basically. I came on holiday and never left.
So what happened to South and Central America?
In the trash.
You destroyed the ticket?
I had to.
I wish I had known you that, but then you might not have been able to transfer the
No,
ticket.
probably
yes?
not. Probably not.
So you stayed.
I stayed. I got literally hooked by Antigua and the people and just the whole.
But
I
you
don't
don't need a
something
job.
bit me. Something bit me here.
wonder
Apart
if
from
it's
the
love.
mosquitoes.
I wonder if it's love. Hey, did you get a job here?
I did. I was offered a job actually pretty quickly after I got here. Something completely different. I worked in a yacht services company in English Harbour at front of house, looking after all the yacht captains who used to come in.
You are
needing
looking after people again.
Again,
You did it in the music
listen,
industry.
It's
I
the
know you-
story of my
it's the
life,
story
looking
of your
after
life,
people,
yes,
right?
yes.
And I loved the job.
Yes.
It was fantastic. And yeah, I met my husband who walked through the door, and yeah, he was working on boats.
I knew something else bit you.
Something else did bite me very hard, and I tried to resist it because I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
But
There's
happened.
something about love.
yes,
It just causes one to become
Absolutely.
very meek and gentle and
it
mild.
really does, and to lose your mind somewhat.
Lose
yeah.
your mind indeed. So you were living in the English Harbour area.
Yes, yes, yes. So things kind of took off between us quite quickly, and so we got married. I got pregnant and had my first son.
Okay.
I sold my apartment in London and I bought a yacht. I mean, it wasn't a very wowsy yacht. It had half a mast.
It's an adventure.
It was an adventure. And it was anchored in English Harbour.
You
Oh,
lived on the
We
yacht?
lived on it. We lived on it.
Your husband,
Yeah.
yourself, and
Yeah.
the baby?
And the baby. And my mom used to come out. She loved Antigua too. She used to come out and help me quite
On
a
the
lot.
yacht?
On the yacht.
Wow.
Yeah. I've
How
got
did you
pictures
protect
of.
that child from falling overboard?
Oh, we had to put netting all the way around the boat. So,
Okay.
so when he became mobile, which he did, you know, he met all his milestones. He
Yes.
became mobile about 1, I think it is. And he used to scoot around the yacht on the deck. And everybody used to watch him because there were other boats anchored. And they thought, oh, what a lovely sight, what a lovely life for a child, you know. And we had a dog. We had a Heinz variety dog that we rescued. And so the dog lived on the boat too.
So it's a couple, the baby, and the dog.
And then next child, because the next child followed pretty soon afterwards.
How soon after?
Well, 17 months between them, so you know,
Wow.
it
It's
was
like
quite
twins.
close. It was quite close.
But so here you are, living on a yacht, and you
With half
have
a mast.
Indeed. 2 young children,
Yeah.
17 months apart. And then, what's the plan?
Well, the plan was originally that we were going to get a mast and travel around the world on the boat.
Because clearly you can't travel around the world on half
Not
mast.
with half a mast, no.
So you were going to circumnav?
Yeah, we were going to literally take off and give the children the best education they could have when they were young and take them around the world. We'd known friends who'd done it with their kids, and these kids were so balanced and so open-minded, and it was a dream. I mean, I would have been in my element doing that.
Yeah.
But things changed.
Right. What changed for you?
So the boys were both diagnosed with autism within the same year, just about. And at that time, nobody really talked about autism because it was very rare. I mean, the figures, the statistics were nothing like they are now, and it didn't seem to be as prevalent. Who knows, have we got better diagnostics these days? What is the reason why there are so many people diagnosed with autism now? Who knows? We don't really know the answers to that. So they were diagnosed within a year of each other, and I was completely thrown into a loop. I hadn't even heard of autism, believe it or not, and nobody gives you a manual, and nobody really gives you any advice.
But did you notice anything different?
I did
babies?
notice.
You did
yeah,
notice?
I did notice some things, but they were very subtle things in a way.
Because you said the first son was meeting his milestones.
They both met their milestones,
So
apart from
they
speech.
sat up and
Yes.
crawled and all of that.
All of that. All of that.
But it's just...
And you know, when you have a child, I think, especially back then, all you were concerned about is that did they have all their toes and their fingers?
Yes,
and
indeed,
physically,
indeed,
you would
yes,
look, wouldn't you,
yes,
physically,
yes.
oh, phew.
Are they sitting
okay,
up by a
yeah.
particular time? Are
Right.
they rolling over
Right.
the milestones?
And that's what you
Yes.
watch. But because I hadn't had any experience of children before, I mean, literally none,
No.
I didn't really know what the norm was, as far
You're probably
as...
thinking he was speaking a little bit, he's just a little bit delayed.
Well, I kept being told that he would.
He would,
Yeah,
yes,
and
yes.
but my eldest son, he didn't sleep. I mean, I'm not
He
joking.
didn't sleep?
He did not sleep, and I thought, do all babies do this? He cried and cried and cried. And I thought, I was worried for him because I thought, is this right? Should he be crying so much? And I've since learned that most autistic people, or a high percentage of autistic people, have sleep issues. So that was probably the first sign. But in a very subtle way, because, babies are babies.
Babies are babies, they will cry.
Exactly.
And they will sleep, because we are told as mothers, when the baby sleeps, you ought to get some sleep at that time. So it means if
never
he was
got
crying,
that.
crying, you never got any sleep.
I didn't.
So you must have been stressed.
To be honest with you, I think the sleep deprivation has continued for the whole of my life to date.
Okay.
Because even when, one was sleeping, the other one would be awake, and that's, that happens anyway.
Yes.
But the sleep issues were extreme.
Okay, we're going to speak a little bit more about that experience when we return after this break.
Okay.
So thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. Caroline's sons were both diagnosed with autism in the same year. And we're speaking about the symptoms, and we have more information coming up for you right after this commercial break. Stay with us, please.
Autistic and learning disabled persons face many inequalities throughout their lives. Many miss out on valuable education. Few are able to access training or employment once they leave school. Healthcare needs can go unnoticed or be neglected. Social isolation is commonplace. Lack of supported community living solutions leads to institutionalization. At Blue Dragonfly, we are committed to building a fully sustainable, supportive community, ensuring integration into the wider community. We are committed to providing experts to train staff in schools, supporting families to understand their loved one's condition and assisting them to succeed, providing person-centered vocational training and employment opportunities through our diverse social enterprise initiatives, ensuring access to appropriate health care, implementing programs designed around social interaction and community leisure activities, building safe and dignified living spaces within our supported community. Our unique and innovative approach to learning and living will provide lifelong opportunities to differently abled Antiguans and Barbudans, enabling them to lead safe, happy, and fulfilled lives just like anyone else. Embracing difference, creating change.
I was doing some research and I came upon ASD level 1, ASD level 2, and ASD level 3. And I thought, wow, these are all different spectrums.
So these are quite new terminology.
Okay.
The old terminology was you would label somebody, and I hate these labels. I'm so against them,
Yes.
and they sound so awful. High functioning or low functioning, or high functioning and severe. You know, it is what it is, but
Yes.
there are
Be
sometimes-
kinder.
Be kinder. There are better
Yes.
ways of saying things, because some of these labels have awful negative connotations, and it
Indeed.
shouldn't be. So
Indeed.
lately, things have been changed to level 1, 2, and 3. So then it tells you where somebody is on the spectrum. Now,
Yes.
the spectrum, as you know, is very, very wide. And everybody with autism is completely different. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, as the saying goes.
Sort of like unique situations.
Totally unique, just like anybody else. Everybody's unique in this
Yes,
world, and
yes,
and autistic people are no different.
Sometimes we use really unkind words
It's
to describe,
dehumanizing.
yes, to
It's
describe persons
dehumanizing.
with disabilities.
Yes.
So this program is helping to
Yes.
change the mindset.
Yes.
It's about transforming our behaviors.
Definitely.
And we are grateful that you have chosen to be here with us. We want to help you as much as
Thank
possible.
you. Thank you for having me.
So your sons were diagnosed, and you said that your eldest son, he cried a lot. You saw subtle symptoms.
Yeah, subtle
Yes,
symptoms.
yes.
But as I didn't really know anything about autism, and in those days we didn't have internet like we do now.
Yes.
It did
So you could do a lot
exist.
of
I'm not
research.
that old, but it did exist.
Don't date yourself.
No, I'm trying not to. And but living on the boat, living on the yacht, we were
Yes.
kind of removed from
With the
reality.
half-mast, yes.
Yeah, with the half mast. And it was honestly, it was a lovely way of life. It was
Yeah.
lovely to be removed from the rest
Yes,
of the world.
yeah.
But then reality hit, and
You have to get
had
help
to
for
start.
these guys.
Yeah, and I fell into a depression when they were both diagnosed. I think because I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to cope. And my marriage was already showing cracks.
Yes.
And I felt very much alone actually at that time. And I think I was in denial a little bit as well.
How could
And-
this be happening?
Yeah, and I think it's more of a protective, self-protection reaction to be in denial.
So it's
although
okay to be in denial.
it's perfectly okay. I mean, anything is okay. Anything anybody feels is okay. It's real.
Okay.
And I don't think it should be denied. I did go on antidepressants for a year, but I found I wasn't really functioning properly. I was just drifting. It was like everything had a sort of
Yes.
cloud over it. And I thought, this is no good. I'm not helping the boys. I'm not helping myself. And
You're
I
not
remember,
alert enough to take care of them.
well, I was alert enough, but I just wasn't feeling
Yeah.
anything. I think I sort of numbed my pain in a way.
Lackluster.
Yeah, and I guess it was my way of coping with it initially. It was a double whammy.
Yeah.
And I remember going into the bathroom on the yacht and had this old kind of brown speckled mirror in there. It wasn't very attractive.
You're so descriptive. Tell me about that speckled mirror.
And yes, the yacht was kind of falling apart in many ways inside. But anyway, we won't go into that. So I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself and I said, Caroline, sink or swim. What are you going to do? And I just said swim. And honestly, that moment was poignant. From that moment on, I weaned myself off the antidepressants over a short period of time. I began to feel the pain, I began to feel the joy, I began to feel again, and really started to do whatever I could do to help the boys. And that's really where the journey began.
That you're probably their biggest cheerleader.
Yes.
So
and
you have to be there
the
for them.
love, the overwhelming love for these boys. And I think the fact that they were both diagnosed with autism made them very vulnerable, and it made me very protective over them. And I still have that to this day.
I am sure, I am sure. So you would say these were just about the worst of times?
They were hard.
Yeah.
They're not the worst times I've had, but
okay.
they were hard.
And
it
where's
was
your
the
mother
beginning.
in all of this?
Oh, my mother,
because I know you've mentioned previously that she was very supportive. So a strained marriage, 2 sons, little boys. I mean, they're just 17 months apart with autism, and you're trying your best to make this work for you and for them.
Yeah, my mother was my rock. Yeah. Always. She was my best friend. We used to get on like a house on fire. We used to fight like cat and dog too, but we used to get on really well.
That's how love is sometimes.
Yeah. But yeah, she used to come to Antigua a lot and stay on the yacht with us and really help out a lot. And I'm so grateful for that, because
she loved Antigua as well.
She loved Antigua and she adored the boys. The boys were, you know, the apple of her eye.
And they loved her too.
They loved her too. And I've got beautiful photographs of her on the, you know, sitting on the beach, on Galleon Beach with the boys, you know, one on each side, looking so happy. And my stepfather used to come out too, because by then my parents were divorced, and my mother had remarried. But actually my father remarried too. And my stepfather used to come out. I was very close to my stepfather too. Sadly, my mum passed a couple of years ago, and that was a massive blow, huge blow.
Are you still grieving for her?
I think I'll always grieve for her.
Okay.
I'll always grieve for her. But since we've come back to Antigua, I found that the black cloud of grief has lifted. And I feel spiritually very close to her here, because it's where I'm happy. This to me is home. And she knew how much Antigua meant to me and the boys, and that the boys were raised here. And she, before she died, she really wanted us to get back here safely.
To return to Antigua?
Yeah. It was her wish.
Well, her wish came true.
I wish she'd been here to see it.
I'm sure you'll see her again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Autistic and learning disabled persons face many inequalities throughout their lives. Many miss out on valuable education. Few are able to access training or employment once they leave school. Healthcare needs can go unnoticed or be neglected. Social isolation is commonplace. Lack of supported community living solutions leads to institutionalization. At Blue Dragonfly, we are committed to building a fully sustainable, supportive community, ensuring integration into the wider community. We are committed to providing experts to train staff in schools, supporting families to understand their loved one's condition and assisting them to succeed, providing person-centered vocational training and employment opportunities through our diverse social enterprise initiatives, ensuring access to appropriate health care, implementing programs designed around social interaction and community leisure activities, building safe and dignified living spaces within our supported community. Our unique and innovative approach to learning and living will provide lifelong opportunities to differently abled Antiguans and Barbudans, enabling them to lead safe, happy, and fulfilled lives just like anyone else. Embracing difference, creating change.
Your mom passed away. Please accept our condolences.
Thank you.
And was that in the heart of COVID?
It was right at the beginning of COVID.
The beginning?
Yeah, so it was quite extraordinary. So it was the beginning of March in 2020. And there was talk about COVID coming to the UK, because we were living in the UK at the time. But everyone was saying, oh, it's just the flu, you know, how the thing went round.
Not too serious.
Not too serious, yeah. And I think at that time there were 36 cases, which is nothing, is it, really?
36.
Just 36, yes. And unfortunately all those zeros got added to that then.
Yeah.
And something came over me one day. It had to be a sign from somewhere. It was some kind of sixth sense. It said to me, go and see your mother. She lived 2.5 hours away from me. Okay. Go and see your mom, call your dad. They were getting on better in later life, and I wanted to just be with them both. For some reason, I don't know what it was. I was overwhelmed by this feeling. So I called them both, and they were both available. So I said, right, let's go out to lunch. So we went down to Malmesbury, which is the village where my mom lived, and my dad met us there. We went out to lunch, and we had the best time. I mean,
Seems
it was
like old times.
We were crying with laughter. My mother and I were joking because she was always very slim as a child, and so was I. Well, still am.
Yes,
and I
good for you.
I used to get teased at school. They said, if you stick your tongue out, Caroline, and we look at you sideways, you look like a zipper. So I used to be called Zip.
Oh my Lord!
And my mom's,
so kind.
I know. And my mom's maiden name was Carr, C-A-R-R. She's Irish.
Yes.
Irish blood. And she said, well, I used to be called Carcass.
That's even worse than Zip.
So the two of us were and my dad was laughing too.
Yes.
And honestly, we were all crying with laughter. And we had the best time.
Yeah.
And then I hugged her so tight and I left her. I never saw her again.
Ooh.
2 weeks later, my brother called me and said Mom was taken to hospital last night with a bad pain in her side. Now, she'd been in and out of hospital a little bit. You know, she was aging. She'd broken her hip previously, and that can cause all sorts of issues. And so I thought, oh, Lord, you know, what's happened? And I called the hospital, and she said, look, you know, you can't come see me. They won't let you in because of this virus that's going around or potentially going around. So they put her in isolation as a precautionary thing. Anyway, within 24 hours, she'd had some tests done, and we found out she had leukemia, pneumonia, and her organs were failing.
These are some serious issues.
I mean, so serious. And I'd seen her 2 weeks prior, and she was absolutely fine. It was so shocking. And they still wouldn't let us come and see her, and they were telling us her organs were starting to fail, and you know what that means.
Yes.
Anyway, at 1:30 in the morning, the hospital called and said, right, at your own risk, you'll have to wear all the, you know, protective gear and everything. Yes, I mean, literally all the paper suits and everything. I said, I don't care, I'm coming. So my brother was on his way. He lived closer than me. I would have to drive for an hour and a half from where we lived to get to the hospital. I couldn't believe it. I got in the car and I got a flat tire 5 minutes down the road.
At 2:30 in the morning.
It was about 1:30 in the morning.
1:30 in the morning.
I never even made it on the highway. I had to pull into a lay-by just before the highway, and I just howled. I just howled out loud.
How could this happen?
Yes. How could...
At a time like this?
No, it was awful. And then my phone rang, and my brother said, she's gone.
I'm glad that you had a good time with her 2 weeks before.
So am I. Hang on to that. Every
yes,
thread.
You have to hold on to that memory.
Every thread.
Because if you think about that 1:30 and that call from your brother, it's going to take you to a dark place.
Yes.
So I beg you, think on the date with your mom and dad.
Absolutely.
And that should get you through.
I'm able to do that now. At first I wasn't, but I'm able to do that now, for sure. And as I said, coming back to Antigua has really...
Dark cloud lifted.
The dark cloud lifted, and I feel really close to her now.
But there was a dark cloud, and you had to pay attention to two young autistic boys who required a lot of attention. How did that work for you? Because they would have been sensitive to your feelings.
Yes, I learned over the years I had to manage my stress and my emotions very much. So I couldn't be sort of vocal when I got stressed, or be loud, or let it out in some other way, like crying, whatever, because it would distress them beyond belief. Because people with autism suffer from anxiety. Most people with autism suffer from great anxiety. And there can be different triggers. And I learnt with my own sons that if they felt that I was stressed, it wouldn't help their stress. So I formalized this sort of technique within myself. And if I can visualize it, it's like an internal plunger that you
Caroline,
push
you and these descriptions
down.
Yes.
So the stress starts to come up, and I would go, okay, breathe.
Suppress it.
I had to suppress it. Now, at first, that really wasn't very healthy. And I think anybody would say, that's really not healthy.
Yes.
But I did learn over time how to then release my stress and deal with it in other ways. I dealt with it in other ways. And I found that after a few years, that became quite a habitual thing. I was able to do it quite easily.
And it was helpful to you.
It's been very
and to the
helpful.
boys.
It sounds really bizarre, I know, but it has proven very helpful.
So if there's a trigger and your boys become pretty anxious, what are some of the behaviors that they might exhibit?
My eldest son can start speaking very fast, and he starts to sort of hyperventilate a bit, and he gets really, really anxious, and then he starts blaming himself for whatever it is. So I said, it's okay, and I have to stay really calm, really, really super calm. And my youngest son, because he hasn't got much language, he's not able to speak very much. He's got some words, but he's not able to speak in full sentences. So can you imagine that? When everything is working inside your head and you understand what people are saying, you're super smart, you know your colors in Spanish, French, German. He does. I don't know how he learned this, but he did.
He's into languages.
He loves languages. He loves French especially. So if he's watching a movie, if he's watching a movie, he'll change the language to French. He obviously likes the sound of the...
Yes, he understands French.
I have no idea, but he either likes the sound of the accent, because it is quite alluring, isn't it?
Yes. All our children, we said, you must learn a foreign language in this household. And all 5, they chose French.
Did they? Interesting.
And I think Spanish is so much easier.
Yes.
But they all chose French, and they enjoy speaking French, except one.
Right.
Except one.
It's a very difficult language to learn,
I
French.
think.
I learned it because of the closeness of England to France.
Yes.
We all learn French at school.
I've oftentimes heard about nonverbal.
Yes.
And you mention it.
Yes.
But yet you say that they speak.
Well, some people with autism can't speak at all.
At all.
So you have to use different communication techniques, and there are a lot of different techniques that you can use, including symbols and words and augmentative devices that you can type words in, and it comes up with the pictures and symbols and the voice.
Yes.
There's all sorts of different things, sign language, all sorts of ways.
So what's the actual meaning of
nonverbal? It's another label that people with autism
these
are given.
labels.
I know, these labels.
You hear nonverbal, you don't expect to hear any sound at all.
Yeah, no, my younger son is classed as nonverbal. So on the paperwork, he's nonverbal, but he does have some speech. And it's so interesting because when he's really stimulated by something, if he really wants something, he can say a whole sentence, clear as day.
Good for him.
Clear as day. And I look around and go, who's that?
It's Oliver.
It's Oliver. What? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's something to do with, it's being locked inside for most of the time. And I say to people, just try and imagine for a moment not being able to speak and express yourself.
Oh boy, Caroline, I can't imagine it.
No.
No.
When I did some training, I used to train the police in the UK in autism. I used to work with a police officer. My eldest son was accosted in the street once, and I got to know this police officer who handled the case, and they actually found the two youth who accosted my son and been very mean to him. And we got together and we trained the whole police force in our area in autism, and it was an amazing experience. And they were very grateful because they said, we need to know, because we come across autistic people in the community.
People, the police officers need to know about the mental health issues.
Absolutely,
because
across the board.
Yes, people are reacting in a particular way, sometimes even being violent.
Yes.
But it's because of the fear within them.
Exactly.
And then they're shot.
Yes.
They're killed sometimes.
Yeah. Or they're
They're
put in jail.
apprehended, yes.
Yeah. Or in a mental health institution, and they
Yes.
shouldn't be there. People with autism have that fight or flight response, especially I've noticed, and this is just my observation,
Yes.
those who are unable to communicate tend to have that fight or flight response. So they can actually grab out at people, or they can hurt themselves. I mean, people with autism of all levels can self-harm and do these things too, but that does happen. And just sometimes even the way perhaps somebody is out, say, in the community, like my eldest son, he doesn't do it anymore for some reason, but he used to pace up and down, and it's his way, they call it stimming, self-stimulatory behaviour. So SSBs, stimming for short. So he used to go out, and it was his way of relieving his anxiety. So he used to just pace back and forth down the street, up and down, and the policeman used to see him, and he said, you know, people would look. He said, if I didn't know any better, I might think he's acting suspiciously.
Exactly.
And this is what happens. And yet it's completely innocent.
I am so glad that we're speaking about this tonight, because it's raising the level of awareness towards autism and the behavior that's exhibited, so that when an autistic child is in the grocery store with his or her parent and is behaving in a particular manner, we don't all become judgmental and think, that child is so rude, that child needs some home training. That child is just behaving normal. This is what the child does. And even sometimes the adults.
And you see, behaviour is a response to not being able to communicate. So behaviour and communication are just inextricably linked. And that's what people forget. It's not a behaviour for no reason. There's a root cause to that behaviour.
You want to express yourself. You know what you want to say. But it's just not happening. So you're confused. You're wondering, why can't I?
And they could be in pain, for example. They can't say. They could be feeling sick. They can't say.
Oh, boy.
It's so hard. And those you know, looks and comments, I mean, it's like water off a duck's back with me now. It's like, and I actually might even say something very nicely, politely.
I'm getting to know you more. But even the caregivers for these individuals need to understand the behaviors and need to understand how to respond.
Absolutely. And that needs very specific training. Very specific training. So when we returned to Antigua recently in December, you know, I got some new support staff for my son, and we did a training for about 2-3 months, all in all.
And in the second part of our program, we're going to speak some more about the Blue Dragon Foundation, your partnership with Barbuda Ocean Club, and what can be expected in terms of help for persons with autism in Antigua and Barbuda. Preschool in Antigua, you said, was very helpful for your boys. So that was a support group as well.
Yeah, the early years were just a pleasure. It was fantastic, and people were so warm, supportive, and they still are. I'm not saying they're not now, because they absolutely are. But yes, my eldest son went to Montessori, Beautiful school.
Yes,
And
I've heard.
oh, I love it. It's still going. And, you know, I take a trip by there sometimes just for down memory lane, have a little peek, you know. And they, you know, my oldest son was, I think, 3 at the time, and they had this amazing wooden floor puzzle of the world, map of the world on the floor. It was laid out, it was huge. And my son very quickly learned exactly where every single country was.
That's the older boy?
Yes.
Okay.
Every single, at the age of 3, knew where every single country was. Now, the names of the countries were written on the bottom of the pieces. So all we had to say to him was, pick, I don't know, Bolivia. Pick Madagascar.
Yeah.
He'd know exactly where every single piece was, even the tiniest little islands in the middle of the ocean.
Yes.
And it just showed his level of learning. He was able to learn. He couldn't speak, but he was able to learn. So they worked on his...
and retain and recall.
Retain. He's
and
like a sponge. He still is.
Yes.
What he learned in his life, I cannot believe. Nobody could believe he went to school and they couldn't believe his knowledge that he had on various subjects. Now, people with autism often have specialist subjects that they then focus on, and they're able to focus on these subjects and learn them.
Music, math.
Back to front, history, big history. I mean, my son learnt them all. About aeroplanes, he knew everything. And he could even tell what aeroplane was flying overhead without even looking, just by the sound of the engine.
The sound of the engine? Seriously?
And he was always right.
Your boys are growing up and they've completed preschool.
So yes, my eldest son went to Montessori, and then he moved to Kids Unlimited. I mean, fantastic school as well.
You had
and
great support.
We really did, and my youngest son went there too. And they opened up a special needs centre at that time.
At Kids Unlimited?
Yes, run by Jasmine Underwood Joseph was the special needs educator there. And she's actually now on our board of directors. We've kept the friendship up since those days. It got to the point, it was about 2007, where they couldn't really help my boys anymore. And they were getting to that age, they were about to move on to secondary school, and it was just, you know, there was nowhere else for them to really go.
Dead end.
And and my younger son had serious eating issues, all to do with his sensory needs, all to do with, you know, smells, textures, even colours of food, temperatures of food. He found most foods he couldn't eat them. He couldn't touch them.
So there's some truth in the beige diet.
There is a beige diet.
Persons.
Yeah, he wasn't really the beige diet. He was more the red diet. He would only eat Chef Boyardee. I mean, literally cans of Chef Boyardee.
Spaghetti and meatballs. So you had to stockpile them.
I had to stockpile, and things weren't so available all the time then. And so I used to stockpile the foods that he was eating. And then as soon as I stockpiled, he'd stop eating them. And I'd have to find something else. And to this day, he does that still.
How old is he now?
22. You should see my cupboards at home. They are bursting with cereal boxes. That
he likes cereal.
He loves sweet and salty.
Oh.
And it's not good because, you know, we're trying to get him to eat healthy. But, you know, it gets to the point where you just have to give in sometimes.
You just have to give him what he likes.
He has to eat.
He has to eat, yes.
He has to eat. He does like broccoli.
Give him a lot of water.
Yeah, we do that.
Consume a lot of water.
Yes, he does that. But he does like broccoli, so that's good. I didn't understand at that time as much as I do now about the sensory needs of autistic people.
You've done a lot of research.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research and met many people, got a lot of advice over the years. So he was at the point where he really needed some medical help. So we left and went straight to Miami Children's Hospital, where he was admitted. It wasn't a nice experience for him. He was very traumatized. You know, he couldn't talk. He didn't like people touching him. It wasn't easy, and they put him on a formula to try and fatten him up and let him have the nutrition that he needed, but the formula tasted awful. I mean, I tasted it and I thought, I'm not surprised you don't want to drink that. It was awful. So, you know, it just remained a battle to try and get enough nutrition in him, and I have to say, of all the things that I find stressful, that is the biggest.
Him not being interested in eating.
Yeah. Because I'm constantly, it triggers me. It's like, oh, I need you to eat. Come on, you've got to eat. It's a mother's instinct, isn't it?
Yes.
Your child needs
Because
to
you know
get
if he
nutrition.
doesn't eat,
you know
he'll
the
become
consequences.
ill.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
And then, if he gets ill, he has to go into hospital. You know what a difficult.
He's traumatized.
It's traumatizing for him. He doesn't want to go to, but he doesn't understand the link between that and that, and it's not something he can help.
I'm looking at you, and we've been speaking. This is our 5th segment or final segment for part 1, and I'm thinking, Caroline Hopton, you're an exceptional mother. And
thank you.
you have done so much to protect your 2 sons who are autistic. And yet, your youngest son was abused on 2 occasions.
Yeah.
There was nothing else you could have done.
It was such an awful time. Gosh.
Black eyes.
Yes.
Bruised legs. Nonverbal. Could not defend himself.
Couldn't tell me what happened.
Couldn't tell you what happened. But we're going to speak about that in part 2. But my last question to you in part 1, actually it's not a question, it's a statement. It's something that you shared with me. And it has remained in my heart. I'm terrified for him, meaning your younger son, Oliver. When I'm no longer here, what will become of him? Your thoughts on that?
For both of them, actually.
Yes.
Because even though my eldest son is more independent, he's still very vulnerable because he can't read people's body language. He doesn't get that human beings can be really cruel and underhand. He doesn't understand that, you know, because they're both pure.
Trusting.
They have no agenda. They have no bad bone in their body, and they're just honest and truthful. I love autistic people. They speak their mind. There's no filter. Sometimes it's a little inappropriate. We've been in some funny situations in the past.
Like?
It's got better. Oh, well, I don't know if I can repeat that.
Oh, not for television,
Not
off
for
here, off
television.
here. I got you. Got you,
But
Caroline.
yes, I think the abuse of my younger son really, I mean, that just sent me reeling, and it just cemented the feeling that I had to do something to change the way things are, because they're just unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. And then I found out that he wasn't alone in this, that it's endemic in the care system.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's probably something that happens worldwide. And not just with autistic people, anybody who's vulnerable.
Persons with disabilities.
And it's abhorrent. I can't, you know, there are no words.
Yes. They're beaten, they're sexually abused.
Verbally abused.
Yes, their funds are taken from them.
Yeah.
People get access to their money, their savings, whatever the case is, wipe out their accounts.
So much.
And it can cause one to become outraged as well.
Yeah.
But we're going to channel our energy into causing this awareness in Antigua and Barbuda so that people recognize that it's important to care for persons who are vulnerable, whether it's autism or any other type of disability.
Absolutely.
We ought to care for them as a society, not only the government, but just the general public. And we're going to be speaking in part 2 some more about Oliver's abuse and how you and 2 of your friends lobbied in the UK to have a particular law amended so that persons with autism can have more protection legally.
Yes, with their family members
With
still
their family
advocating
members.
for them.
Yes. Tonight we've presented part 1 of my conversation with Caroline Hopton. She's the mother of 2 autistic boys. Thank you for staying with us. And join us next week for part 2 of The Paula Show, a conversation with Caroline Hopton. Have a good evening. Goodbye.